Hello, I'm Paul Smith and I hope you are very well. Welcome to this week's edition of Money Matters, because after all, money does matter. I was talking earlier on today to a very good friend of mine about money, and we were talking about one of the best descriptions I've ever heard about money is it's like oxygen. Now, if you haven't got enough oxygen, you're clearly in big trouble. And if you don't have enough money, you're clearly in big trouble. But as soon as you get enough money, as soon as you can breathe, suddenly money goes away as an issue. So this week, we've got a very special edition of Money Matters, which we do once a month. And this week, I don't actually have a fixed agenda. I respond to whatever questions you ask. So the team have picked three of the most interesting questions that we've been asked, and I'm going to fire away and I'm going to go through. And if you want me to give you a shout out on your name, I can, but only if I know what your name is. So I'm going to read out the names where I've got them and not when I haven't. So the first question, this is from Sean Hennessy, is: are mortgages through a limited company based on turnover, stroke profit, etc.? Do you have to be trading for a minimum period? All right, great question, Sean. So over the last 12 months, because of the impact of Section 24, all the nasty anti-landlord taxes, many people have been buying their properties through limited companies. And in fact, the mortgage industry released statistics recently that said 75%, 3 out of 4 mortgages that were granted for people buying buy-to-let properties in the last 12 months were not to individuals, they were to limited companies. They will judge the buy-to-let mortgage application as if it was a person. In other words, the normal stress test applies. So a stress test, what's a stress test? They will take the mortgage payments and then they will say, do the rental payments or the projected rental payments, because your surveyor will say, you know, this will rent for 500 a month, 600 a month, 700, whatever. So does the rental payment cover 140%, 1.4 times, 140% of the mortgage amount? And if the answer to that is yes, well, it's not about the P&L, the balance sheet, the company. It's about the company's ability to afford the mortgage based on the projected rental income. So it's effectively the same as if you're a private individual. And then the second part to your question, Sean, is do you have to be trading for a minimum period? And the answer to that is no. In many ways, they prefer, you might have heard the expression shelf company. So if you imagine you go to Companies House, sets up a company, and imagine you just literally pull it off the shelf, like ready-made, with a name and everything and a number. That's a shelf company. So you can go to Companies House website and you can set that up for like £12.99. It's like dirt cheap. So in many ways they prefer it, because just imagine they lend money to an existing company that's been trading for many years. All sorts of skeletons could be hiding in those cupboards. So let's say somebody goes to the bank and says, well, I'd like to borrow some money. I've been trading as a property company for 20 years and I've got 10 staff. Now imagine that you've got a new manageress who comes in and sacks the youngest boy in the office, and she actually says to him, you know, you're useless because you're a bloody man and, you know, you're far too young to be doing this job. Boom! She's just got a discrimination claim on her hands there. And the limit for a gender discrimination claim or an age discrimination claim, and I'll just give you both there, that's a double whammy, is there's no limit. So the company could get closed down, taken out, and the industrial tribunal payment to cover that would actually take precedence in, well, virtually every case over any bank debt. So they prefer companies off the shelf, in many cases, that don't have a trading history, which might sound a bit perverse, but that's the way the world is. So thank you, Sean. Okay, next, Barry J. Page. What's the best tax efficient way to pay oneself for an LLP and limited setup? Both. That is about a 4-day question. It's a great question, Barry. I love it. We have an LLP that owns the property. That is called the PropCo, the property company. We then have a limited company that operates the company. So it's OpCo, PropCo. Property company, LLP, OpCo, limited company. Then the question becomes, well, what's the best way? Now, that is always a temporary answer to that question because they change the tax rules every year. Here's the next thing you need to know. An LLP, limited liability partnership, is subject to personal tax. A limited company is subject to corporation tax. So depending whether they put corporation tax up or down, or personal tax up or down, that will vary the answer year to year. But the critical thing is you've got both. Own it in an LLP, operate it in a limited company. Sometimes accountants might refer to this as a hybrid structure. And then you'd have an agreement, a rental agreement, effectively with yourself between the operating company and the property company, sometimes called a management agreement. And that allows you to flex the profits between the LLP and the limited company. So I think given the time constraints and given the very broad nature of the question, that's probably about the best I can do for now. So I hope that's useful, Barry, and everybody else. And these are fantastic questions, by the way. And if you would like to ask a question, please do. Just make a comment below the video, and the team will pick out the most interesting ones, the things that we think are going to help the most people for a future edition of a Money Matters Q&A. So if you want your name in lights, if you want a big shout out there, then just let me know. And the third and final question for this week. Could you please let me know how to build a portfolio with investor money and which areas that strategy will work? Now, if I thought the previous question was pretty broad, this is possibly one of the broadest possible questions. And this is coming from Farouk Iftikhar. So Farouk is saying, it's a great question, Farouk. I get it, and I love the way your mind's working. Could you please let me know how to build a portfolio with investor money, which areas that strategy will work? The second half of your question was, which areas does a property strategy work? Dead easy answer to that question, worldwide, and certainly UK-wide. Can you make property make money throughout the whole of the UK? Yes. Are there certain areas where certain property strategies might work better than others? Yes. So let's take an example. If you're running regular buy-to-lets and you want a good yield, so if you want the rent that you're going to receive to be a good percentage versus the cost of the property, it's called a yield. So I don't know, if you're getting £10,000 a year and the property was £100,000, that would be a 10% yield. And that would be a really good yield for a buy-to-let. So generally, buy-to-lets work best in terms of a yield, cash flow, in the cheaper areas. Now you can define cheap, because if you live in Westminster, then East Ham might be cheap. On the other hand, if you live in Preston in Lancashire, then East Ham is really expensive. So cheap or expensive is always relative. But what I can assure you is that property as an investment strategy works fantastically throughout the whole of the UK. As long as you've got local knowledge, as long as you've got education, as long as you've got support. And of course, you know this, if you want support, education and knowledge, then Touchstone Education is the place to go. Come along to one of our free six-figure summits, ask any questions live face-to-face from me or any other speakers, trainers, whatever. Because the other thing that you can't forget is you could be investing for cash flow, money every month, or you might be investing for capital appreciation. So whilst the cheaper areas are generally better for, and this is very broad, the cheaper areas are generally better for cash flow, the more expensive areas are generally better for capital appreciation, which is why the properties are more expensive. So, returning to the first part of your question, could you please let me know how to build a portfolio with investor money? So as an example, I've got really good friends in Scotland, very, very simple. They're originally from Singapore. What they do is this. The people in Singapore, through foreign investors, through UK limited companies, set up a UK limited company for each investor. The foreign investor can own it together with you, the local investor. They provide the 25% deposit, happy days, cash. You locally, using your skills, your knowledge, get the right property, maybe manage the refurb, put a tenant in, that sort of stuff. And you get a limited company mortgage. So now, locally, you're not using any money. I love that strategy. And using this one simple, single strategy, my friends up there, they're adding one property per week. Imagine that. Then they're sharing the profit 50-50. So maybe you're thinking buy-to-lets, well, they're not that profitable. They are if you start adding one a week. How many of those would you need to be financially free? Okay, so we've had a couple of limited company questions. We've had limited company mortgages. And we've then had a question about how do you optimize between an LLP and a limited company. All fantastic questions. So thank you to Barry, thank you to Farouk, and thank you to Sean. That wraps it up for this edition of Money Matters Q&A. Hope you found it interesting. As I said previously, get your questions in. And what I want you to do is make a commitment to yourself. If you think money is important, if you think money matters, make a regular appointment with your diary and check out Money Matters every Wednesday. You've been wonderful. I've been Paul.